And like I said, my big driver is to try and get every school in the country, or in the world really. We have got schools around the world as well, but every school in the country to basically be compliant, and that's why we got up. There's a free version of our system that you can have. You can have one user, but it's a free version of it. And again, I think that's another thing that differentiates us as well. So anybody can sort of sign up and use it. We get people that sign up and use it. It's that easy to use. You can just log in and go and use it. I'm sort of promoting it again there, but
I think it's interesting because I think, it is a major sort of part of the sort of infrastructure of a school or a MAT. It is a big, compliance is really, really important, as you said. I think the fact that, also in some ways you could easily link it to finance, that is going to be, I should imagine is going to be important. And probably all the other systems and management systems. So you normally look at it as, there's some big pieces regarding management systems, from a finance system to an MIS to HR and payroll to compliancy. All those things are quite important as a structure. I think with schools though, sometimes, because the main focus of the school is to teach kids. Absolutely.
It is, yeah. But again, there's stats around that as well though. There's stats around how there was a white paper done. Sodexo and RICS, Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, did a survey. All right, this is in the wider world, so it wasn't specifically for schools, but it sort of moves its way down. But 61%, they found that 61% of people, they felt that they were in a clean, safe environment that was well maintained. Their well-being was much higher,
yeah,
and their productivity was much higher. Well, obviously, if you sort of move that down, I mean, I have sort of like done some research around how that links to schools, and there are stats as well around staff turnover in schools that don't feel sort of safe not just about safe in terms of violence, but safe in terms of how well their school is maintained. So and there is a paper out there that says that there is a staff turnover can be as high as 25% for actually affecting how staff feel within an organisation that they don't feel is sort of conducive to a learning environment, I suppose.
Oh man, I totally agree. The environment is massively important. You look at some of these new schools that came, from the sort of BSF days.
Yeah.
And ultimately, there's a lot of new schools which they used to put a lot of time and effort into what that school, what the environment looked like. Because ultimately it's really important for kids to feel they're in, sometimes airy.
Yep.
Sort of, it's not just necessarily about wires coming down from the ceiling, which obviously would worry them, but there's also the whole concept of the environment and how how the school looks and how easy is it to move between classrooms, like expanding corridors and things like that. That all those things were taken.
And that's all part. And again, that's all part of a bigger piece of the pie. That's all part of the bigger piece of the puzzle around compliance. So, like I said, that's effectively what we're discussing there is asset management and how well you maintain the school in terms of the assets. Which is, like I said, it is a feature, and we do have an area of our system that obviously does that and does that well. And it's something which is. Should be really at the forefront of people's minds. I know you've got things like capital planning when you go and do projects, and that's, I mean, in my years and years ago when I used to work at my dad's electrical contracting business, we had our whole focus was around the school holidays, because we did a lot of work for the local authority. And working in that sort of school environment, and you just see the sort of the money that goes into it, and the mind, what goes into it, and why it gets planned, and it just kind of opens your eyes a bit more to actually why so much money obviously goes into obviously these refurbs. I mean, the PFI stuff and whatever was all a bit that was all a bit crazy really, but actually, like I said, some of these sort of renovation projects that people do and why they do it, it's critical to getting the outcomes that you need for schools to function and get the right grades and get the kids developed. And I mean, I think it all features into the obviously the melting pot, I think. And And I think that's again, it's all around the compliance side of it, and understanding that, and having people within your organisation to be able to understand why things happen and how things happen, and what was the reason behind you did this, what the reason behind that. It all kind of lends itself to making a better environment in your school, and I think that's critical.
Well, it's one of the key pillars. If you going back to the sort of MIS finance, it's one of those key pillars. And you've got learning, obviously, which is over the top of it. But if you don't have those key pillars, then you're potentially either negating one element which could support learning, but also at the same time, obviously, health and safety is in its own right would be is something you shouldn't negate.
I think probably the other, because it's not a trendy topic, it's never been sort of held up in that sort of high esteem. But if you look at MISs, and if you look at financial packages, it's all about data, isn't it? It's all about data, and it's all about having everybody's name, everybody's records, and all that sort of stuff, and numbers and what have you. With compliance, you are, and the reason it's got, like I said, because it's got a bit of a bad name, is because you are reporting on the absence of safety. You are reporting on the absence of the data that you're going to get from a compliance system is all going to be bad news. It's going to be. Well, it is. If you've got how safe is an organisation? This goes back to what I'm saying about how do you gauge a happy marriage just by looking at the divorce. No, it's not that. It's actually, if you look at it in a wider context and look at actually the stuff that doesn't get captured in terms of the data, what is all the stuff that went right, and report. It's because, like I said, nobody wants to report bad news, but obviously in your compliance package, you're going to report incidents and accidents and things you don't want to report. Then like I said, you're reporting on the absence of it rather than the presence of it. And I just think that there needs to be a bit of a shift in the mindset about how you capture maybe how you capture data, and how you kind of lend your knowledge to other people within the organisation that want to do a good job, and have everybody focused on this kind of safety mindset. I mean, now you've got the whole school wellbeing programs, and wellbeing is a massive part of health and safety as well. It's if you can think straight, and if you can think with clarity, then obviously less accidents are going to happen, and it's pretty obvious. So give the organisation the feedback, give the organisation the positive feedback that you get. Why can't that be reported? Why can't you go and take some training on certain things? If you think you're going to be flustered and rushed, why are you operating a gas shutoff valve, or why are you doing something to do with your organisation, doing water temperature checks if you're knackered, or do you know what I mean? It's one of these things where give the positive feedback, and then it might start getting a bit more publicity out there, and be seen as the good guy rather than the bad guy. And I think that's really like I said, with a culture of actually capturing negatives. But it's always going to be negative, isn't it? It's always going to be. But actually, compliance is a really, really good thing. I mean, it lifts everybody. If you know you're in I speak to so many schools that are really, really great, positive schools that really. I mean, one school I spoke to in Leeds, absolutely brilliant. They're the Beacon School of Leeds. You speak to them, they're bubbly on the phone. They're talking to you about various things and the impact that they're having, and they're in a deprived area of Leeds. It's a great story that they tell you when you speak to them, and everybody feels the same way. Everybody feels very passionate about the school. It's great because I feel very passionate about compliance and the management of compliance. And so when they want to engage with you like that, and they want to come back and give you their sort of lowdown of how well the system's working for them, it really you really just think, wow, if every school can be like you, how much better would the world be? But unfortunately, that's obviously never going to be the case. But ultimately, there's also the other end of the scale where there's schools with that have got various issues. And I mean, again, one of the other sort of major sort of moments of realization was when I visited the school when I was just trying to get the thing off the ground, really, and the caretaker on the site he'd been there for 5 years, and he'd never once been put through any kind of training at all. And he had 364 kids in that school. He'd had 3 head teachers in the organisation, and he just wanted help. He wanted help, and so and it was kind of, I stayed with him and gave as much help as I could, but obviously then give him access to the system, and he found it very valuable, and he still uses it today. And it's just there's so many different stories. There's so many different ways that people skin it, I suppose, and obviously now the maths are becoming more prominent. There is more. I mentioned it before. I think I'm finding a lot more people from outside of the education sector are moving into the education sector and kind of bringing with them that knowledge as well, and bringing with them more of an understanding of it. And so it is, like I said, it is such a major factor within schools today, within every organisation today, but schools in particular, because they have this heightened duty of care of the school premises regulations. They've got Ofsted looking at them in terms of safeguarding. There's lots of different things that need to be the light needs to be shone on in schools, and it is as important as running your school in an MIS. It is another pillar just alongside your finance package. It is a major feature of schools. So here to help.
And do you feel that with all the maths, so obviously the recent sort of announcements like from Gavin Williamson and stuff, it's very much about the continuation of maths, and almost all schools basically at some point will go underneath a mat, or and do you think the compliancy piece in the future, even though it's becoming more, obviously there are mats that are taking it seriously, but do you think that actually the onus will be purely on the mats in the future, in the sense that they will try a little bit like finance, where they basically own it, but then basically empower the schools to then sort of manage their own budgets to a degree, but ultimately they centralize ultimately.
Yeah. So you're seeing a lot more. Like I said, because people are moving into the education space for maybe the outside world, I suppose. You're seeing a lot more people like directors of operations that are coming in.
Yeah. So
when they're coming in with the director of operations, they know it's a problem. They know they need to solve this problem. Whereas I think in previously, if you've been working for a local authority or if you've been working for a school, be a local authority for the last 15 years, 20 years, and it's just been something that they've looked after in the past, it's never been on the radar. So the whole kind of movement towards more multi-academy trust means that obviously I think because there is a big herd mentality in schools, it has to catch on, because obviously they are always, like I said, schools, mats consolidating, aren't they, and getting bigger and bigger. And then because you can do that, because the mats can afford to have these director of operations and maybe a chief exec that might have been in another part of the world somewhere as well, in another industry, they realise that actually this is a major piece of the pie, or a major piece of the puzzle, and actually it does get a bit more. It looks like it does get a bit more. There is a light shone on it a bit more in a bit more publications that you see now. But a lot more needs to be done. I think a lot more needs to be done so that nobody is left behind. So that some of the smaller organisations that seem to think that they can not get away with it, but they think that the only solution is to do things on PowerPoint on Excel spreadsheets, and hope and pray that nothing happens is not it's not actually that something that they that they need to do now. There is other solutions out there, and if you can get together with other schools and communicate, they do a lot of talking as well, don't they? So yeah. I think it can only go, like I said, it can only really sort of go a really sort of positive way, I think, in the future, and hopefully that's the way it goes, because, like I said, schools do need help. They do need help, and hopefully it just becomes a bit more the norm.
No, I totally agree with you. So where do you? So if you're going to look in 3 years into the future, where do you think this is all going to be?
So compliance is always moving. The compliance rules are always moving. I mean, you've got GDPR. I mean, you've got things like CDM regulations that came out in 2015 that sort of pushed on people in over a period of a couple of years. So you've always got to shape and change how you do things and what have you. So 3 years is a long time when it comes to compliance. But the evolution, I think, is going to be a bit more around automation and how things are sort of physically automated. How you can sort of physically automate your planned maintenance baby. That's something that needs to be addressed. There's a lot of AI investment into AI at the moment as well. It's certainly in the safety space. There's things that you can. There's obviously there's areas that are being pushed on in terms of intelligent risk assessments and that kind of thing. I'm not saying that we're going to sort of catch that up anytime soon, but it's certainly somewhere that it's going. But it's all, a lot of it is around, and this is why we spend a lot of our time investing into sort of the whole upskilling of people to try and make people understand a bit more about safety. That's a lot of it is going to come from learning. I think the whole sort of learning piece is and I think we're in the right place for that at the moment, and the evolution of that. I think there's going to be a lot more understanding of how compliance fits in with the wider scope of all of your whole organisation, and how can it be made easier for people on site. And I say that having seen lots of people actually out there, lots of site managers and caretakers and that kind of thing. They all really want to do a great job, and they want to be at the sort of the forefront of helping their school and being really active and proactive. I mean, I don't know if they came just for the breakfast, but I put on a sort of a training morning for competent caretakers a couple of years ago, a competent caretaker session. And it was oversubscribed. Just couldn't fit them all in the room. It's brilliant because they want to learn and they want to understand. And so that whole, like I said, the whole sort of process of actually upskilling people is going to be a massive part of it. The automation of things like, I mean, the whole sort of facilities management space is moving a lot in terms of automation and automating your temperature checks for Legionella purposes and your fire alarms and that kind of thing. It's all sort of intelligently read. I don't know how fast that's going to come into the school space.
Definitely moving.
Yeah, but I mean, it's something which obviously you need to be thinking about. We need to be thinking about, which we will think about. But it's, yeah, I think that's the way it's. Like I said, that's the way it's going to go. I certainly think there's things around, like I said, things around automated guidance. I think is going to be a lot of a big piece.
I think I'm really interested in this. I think it'd be interesting to see how far this wellbeing piece goes, because you look at data for lots of different things. You know, the MIS data. You try and then you associate it with the finance data to see, you know, which subjects, you know, you basically, you know, which subjects are performing, which ones aren't. You know, how much is costing, all those things. But wellbeing, you can easily add that into the mix from, you know, if we basically change. So you talk about temperature. So let's change the temperature from, you know, in every classroom from, I don't know, 25 degrees to 18 degrees. You know, do we get better performance from those classrooms or 18 degrees? You know, just all that sort of thing where you basically, you know, and then the same with the staff, as you said before, you know, the idea that basically are all the staff more happier now they're getting more training on health and safety, you know, and you can start to include safeguarding into that as well, and, you know, and all those things. But I think, you know, there's a lot to be said about, you know, how, you know, there's a lot that can be brought in from systems like yourselves to actually sort of support the well-being of staff as well as children. So it'd be really interesting to see how that, you know, if that evolves.
Like I said, I mean, I agree completely with what you're saying, and I think that the whole piece around well-being, I mean, it is a massive topic now. Let's be fair; it's a huge topic. There are lots of different features and functions out there that are coming to the market all the time as well. So, but essentially, a lot of it's around communication and being able to talk, and it is a massive part of it. But actually, where I think that the organisations will win is by making their staff feel that they are invested into, and I think that's really where the major the major piece comes, is in terms of giving them everything they need to be able to handle any sort of circumstance and occurrence that comes up. And obviously everybody within a school has different challenges. So that's not a teacher has different challenges to what the school business manager has the different challenges to what the school site manager has. And so, yeah, I mean, there is probably things out there that building management systems, no doubt, that have some kind of well-being thing around things like lighting. And I mean, I know there are obviously rules and regulations around lighting and lux levels and temperature controls and whatever, and that kind of thing. And maybe there is a way of harnessing that and putting it into making it some sort of mechanism to be able to for people to be able to perform better. Yeah, that's. I mean, again, it's all these things that we're talking about now, which the technology is there, and I think the problem is that schools have never been able to really afford to pay for this in the past, and because lots of things are becoming a bit more cheaper now, a lot more. The development of products is becoming a lot more cheaper in terms of hardware products. Yeah, potentially. I mean, there is something around the corner that might come from that, and we're always investigating certain things around that area as well. So, watch the space. Who knows?
Yeah, it'd be interesting. So, I've got one more question. It'll be really good to ask. So, obviously, where do you see iAM compliant in the next 3 to 5 years? What's your goals?
So our we just had £1 million investment. That's one thing we've just had, and there's lots of things we're doing. With that. Our training side of our business, our learning side of our business, is massive, and it's a large part of it. It's a large part of the business, and where that's going is great, and it's forever evolving. There are it's really great that we've got that side of the business is functioning, and all the best elements of learning of L&D we can actually bring into the education space as well, which is what I really that kind of excites me, because learning is I've got this diagram with that actually what health and safety and compliance is, and wrapped around everything in health and safety and compliance is learning. So that side of it is something which will continually evolve, reinvesting all things into that as well, and making sure that everything works for our sort of L&D customers and that side. But in terms of the compliance tool, we will continue to just. I mean, the schools is the whilst we've got other people that use our system, other organisations that use our system outside of schools is 95% of it. So and it's not just schools in the UK, it's schools further afield, and they just set up and off they go. And so I'm trying to simplify the whole compliance solution for schools predominantly, and we are doing things within our app that evolve purely because schools require it to evolve in their particular way. So it's kind of even though if you were to sign up for another business, certain elements would be switched off that you wouldn't see. So if you wanted the whole sort of suite, then you get everything in terms of iAM compliant, and you're a school. And so we just it's just been a case of just continually talking to schools, getting the feedback from them on what works for them, what doesn't work for them. And just evolving it even more to suit that marketplace, and to just try and push everything forward, really. Just try and sort of push the whole compliance movement forward, I suppose. I mean, it's like I say, it's we sell it. It's less than £1,000 for. It's just, do you know what I mean? It's just, why wouldn't a school sign up to it? It's we will always kind of have this sort of ethos of actually, we know the marketplace we're serving don't have much cash. So when you don't have much cash and you're selling an unpopular topic, but a need to have topic, then obviously I think we're priced correctly. And like I said, I think there's so many different things we could do. There's so much of an opportunity in schools, so much opportunity in schools further afield as well. So, but predominantly the UK is obviously where it's at. So that's where we're focusing.
I've got this picture in my head now because you know, sort of with a placard, sort of going, compliance is really important. You know, everyone to understand how important it is.
Compliance rules, compliance rules. Yeah, and it should be. It should be. That should be the forefront of everybody's mind. It's not obviously the most important things for kids, but so it's yeah, it's just like I said, we continue. There's lots of exciting things and lots of exciting partnerships to explore as well. So long may that continue as well.
Yeah, no, indeed. Well, I just have to say then a big thank you, Luke, for your time. I have to say it's really good to get your insights into your business and how you've entered into the education market and the reasons why. And there's no doubt about it, if anybody's out there, wow, if you want to be successful, then you have to be passionate, because the one thing he definitely comes from you, and this is from every time we've spoken, is that you're absolutely passionate about this area, which is good, which is great, which is a fantastic place to be. And I think it's very, very important. There's no point running a business or having a business which you just don't feel passionate about. So, you know, my hat goes off to you, and your team are also, I think I've sort of mentioned it before, you know, they've also got that sort of, you know, imprint of that sort of massive passion about delivering.
Great. Yeah, thank you very much. Really appreciate that. I really, really appreciate the giving me the chance to obviously come on here as well. I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much indeed.
No, thank you.